My name's Seth Privach. I'm the chief ninja of Scavenger. I am a proud Princeton dropout, also proud to have relocated here to Boston, where I actually grew up. And yeah, Boston. Easy wins. I should just go and name the counties that we've got around here. So I'm also fairly determined to try and build a game layer on top of the world. And this is sort of a new concept, and it's really important, because while the last decade was the decade of social, and the decade of where the framework in which we connect with other people was built, this next decade will be the decade where the game framework is built, where the motivations that we use to actually influence behavior, and the framework in which that is constructed is decided upon, and that's really important. And so I say that I want to build a game layer on top of the world, but that's not quite true, because it's already under construction, it's already happening, and it looks like this right now. It looks like the web did back in 1997, right? It's not very good. It's cluttered. It's filled with lots of different things that, in short, aren't that fun. There are credit card schemes and airline mile programs and coupon cards and all these loyalty schemes that actually do use game dynamics and actually are building the game layer. They just suck. They're not very well designed, right? So that's unfortunate. But luckily, as my favorite action hero, Bob the Builder, says, we can do better. We can build this better. And the tools, the resources that we use to build a game layer are game dynamics themselves. And so sort of the crux of this presentation is going to go through 4 really important game dynamics, really interesting things that if you use consciously, you can use to influence behavior, both for good, for bad, for in between, hopefully for good. But this is the sort of the important stages in which that framework will get built. And so we want to all be thinking about it consciously now. Just before we jump into that, there's sort of a question of why is this important? I'm sort of making this claim that there is a game layer on top of the world and that it's very important that we build it properly. The reason that it's so important is that the last decade, what we've seen has been building the social layer, has been this framework for connections. And construction on that layer is over. It's finished. There's still a lot to explore. There's still a lot of people who are trying to figure out social and how do we leverage this and how do we use this. But the framework itself is done, and it's called Facebook. And that's okay, right? A lot of people are very happy with Facebook. I like it quite a lot. They've created this thing called the Open Graph, and they own all of our connections. They own 500 million people. And so when you want to build on the social layer, the framework has been decided. It is the Open Graph API. And if you're happy with that, fantastic. If you're not, too bad. There's nothing you can do. But this next decade, that's a real thing. I mean, we want to build frameworks in a way that makes it acceptable and makes it productive down the road. So the social layer is all about these connections. The game layer is all about influence. It's not about adding a social fabric to the web and connecting you to other people everywhere you are and everywhere you go. It's actually about using dynamics, using forces to influence the behavior of where you are, what you do there, how you do it. That's really, really powerful. And it's going to be more important than the social layer. It's going to affect our lives more deeply and perhaps more invisibly. And so it's incredibly critical that at this moment, while it's just getting constructed, while the frameworks like Facebook, like the Open Graph, are being created for the game layer equivalent, that we think about it very consciously. And that we do it in a way that is open, that is available, and that can be leveraged for good. And so that's what I want to talk about for game dynamics, because construction has just begun, and the more consciously we can think about this, the better we'll be able to use it for anything that we want. So, like I said, the way that you go through and build on the game layer is not with glass and steel and cement, and the resources that we use are not this two-dimensional swath of land that we have. The resources are mindshare, and the tools, the raw materials, are these game dynamics. So with that, a couple game dynamics to talk about. 4, back at Scavenger, we like to joke that with 7 game dynamics, you can get anyone to do anything. And so today I'm going to show you 4, because I hope to have a competitive advantage at the end of this still. So the first one, it's a very simple game dynamic. It's called the appointment dynamic. And this is a dynamic in which to succeed, players have to do something at a predefined time, generally at a predefined place. And these dynamics are a little scary sometimes because you think, other people can be using forces that will manipulate how I interact, what I do, where I do it, when I do it. That this sort of loss of free will that occurs in games can be frightening. So with each dynamic, I'm going to give 3 examples. One that shows how this is already being used in the real world, so you can sort of rationalize it a little bit. One that shows it in what we consider a conventional game. I think everything is a game, but this is sort of more of a, what you would think is a game played on a board or on a computer screen. And then one, how this can be used for good. So we can see that these forces can really be very powerful. So the first one, the most famous appointment dynamic in the world, is something called happy hour. I just recently dropped out of Princeton and actually ended up for the first time in a bar, and I saw these happy hour things all over the place, right? And this is simply an appointment dynamic. Come here at